Hey, what's up, Shaman King fans, and welcome back to What's the Difference, where I compare a specific series, various different media adaptations. That goes for the Shaman King series with its 2001 anime adaptation, as well as its 2021 anime adaptation. Up until more recently, we've seen a lot of similarities because the original anime wasn't quite up to a point where it was catching up too much to the manga. But more recently, we've seen a great division, especially once the characters got to America, with the original anime taking more time for the characters to spend their time within America, kind of bonding to a certain degree as a way of not getting to the shaman fight too immediately. Whereas in the original manga, and as it's more closely adapted into the 2021 anime series, they arrived fairly quickly to the site of the Shaman King fight, with a lot of their bonds being mostly off-screen. And the one downside of the newer adaptation is it doesn't really always explain the amount of time that has passed over the course of the series. Whereas our team has actually had several months off screen to grow and develop and understand each other's strengths and weaknesses. And whereas I can understand anyone who doesn't see that as a plus, they'd rather see that development take place. What it came down to in terms of the manga was the fact that our characters were at some point going to clash against each other in this competition. That was ultimately what was going to happen at some point. And to have all of our characters know what each one is capable of, it decreases some of the tension when they would go up against each other eventually, which comes to the forefront, especially in the newest episode of the 2021 series. But before I actually get to the parts that need to critically be compared, I'm going through a few episodes of the original anime, as some of that actually ties in directly with where things lead up to with the episode that recently aired. So in episode 39 of the original series, most of it still takes place as our core team, is journeying to the Patch Village. And for the most part, they are very lost throughout most of this time frame. It's a whole bunch of carefree comedy, bonding, growing, all that good stuff. And naturally, with filler, you get more of the Lily Five. And they're basically trying to get information on their destination to the Patch Village from them by claiming that they're trying to give them a ride, which wasn't actually true. And actually gives up all the information. And then they just take the information and straight up leave without giving them a ride. And as usual, you have a little bit of How trying to interfere. And this is where I'll skip through because the encounter with Team Flowers is a plot point within the manga. This is the same episode where Anna encounters How and delivers the legendary left. And then we get to the 40th episode, which is Chosenji Rekaketsu. And if you haven't understood why I just keep calling it the Book of How, there you go. I'm not saying that every time. Where Anna arrives after basically saving Yo's ass. Nice little encounter with Ren and his sister. Manta gets to meet up with Yo and Amidamaru. Get the original band back together, Tamao, and the revelation that she tamed Hao's Shikigami, Manta's first meeting with Chocolove, and then she explains the whole history of this book, how it's tied to Hao and how it has great power. And then Jean senses it. Jean doesn't worry about it too much, but she does want them to kind of investigate, as they want to bring Yo over to their side. And they relate it back to the patch that they saw from 500 years ago. How Hao has passed from ancient Japanese Asakura to being in the Patch tribe to being an Asakura once again. And the fact that because it was an Asakura who started this, it should be an Asakura to end this. And that Yao's mission is to defeat Hao, which is what his grandfather said. And whereas it was originally only Faust and Ryu who were also able to access it, but all of them want to be able to access it. And Anna even brings up the fact that she doesn't want and potential enemies to gain that power. But Ryu does explain that he's, subservient to Yo. And the fact that even Yo considers this mostly just a problem for the Asakuras. And Ren's even willing to take the power by force, which is actually pretty on brand for someone like him. I mean, I guess it does show the bonds of all of them in wanting to actually go through all of this. It's mostly that they don't want to involve them in an Asakura problem, but they just see it as, well, if we have more power, that means less of a struggle with everything down the line. It's actually a little bit of a cute bit of camaraderie, and she essentially creates this kind of portal into this cave that she's extracted the essence of the book so that they can use it almost like a hyperbolic time chamber. And just notice that Faust is here. It really does highlight their friendship in a lot of ways. Meanwhile, the X-Laws are on their way to investigate exactly what Yo and his gang are up to. And we get a little bit of Lyserg's conviction to the X-Laws. And then they're just teleported into this dimension where they can kind of see most of Hao's backstory and showing that there's some kind of danger in learning from Hao's memories and thoughts. Despite the fact that just making it a book is just kind of like, wouldn't it be just simple to read from it? Certain techniques that they weren't privy to before, understandings and all that stuff. But I guess through experiencing it, you gain a different kind of experience. But it brings forward the question, does the risk justify doing it this way? There's a risk of them being swayed by Hao's mental state, and Manta wants to help in some way, shape, or form as well. And Manta starts to feel very distant from all of it. And then he encounters Hao for some reason, who's always had this weird problem with Manta hanging around Yo. And it shows how, in the past, Hao was actually able to hear the minds of other people and the fear that they had, and how speaking to them through his memories. It's actually pretty interesting, having Hao trying to sway Yo to his side within his book, and it's something that Hao wants, for him to awaken a great power and potentially be swayed towards his side. This confrontation between Manta and Hao is also very fascinating, as they represent two sides of Yo's life. One that's all about the spirituality, and one that vaguely is fearful of it. And it really does show the depth of power that Hao actually has, which is something that is highlighted in the manga. Hao has insane amounts of power, and the pollution and the degradation that humans have brought upon the earth, there's a greater emphasis on it, in terms of the original anime. That's not to say that the manga never goes in that direction. Oh, no. It is brought up several times. But the original anime really made it a plot point for a lot of shamans. Hell, even Ren, it made a lot of sense for. The fact that they actually start to feel kind of swayed by Hao's thoughts and the world that he would create as the Shaman King. Create a world of nothing but those who are filled with spirituality, that have a connection to nature. It's funny too, because the way a lot of the characters do raise their Furyoku is actually very morbid. So this kind of serves as a little bit of a middle point, in opposed to having a very near-death experience. And then they come back and it's very undetermined with how they feel. And I love how unflappable Anna is in this situation, even though she's uncertain. The question of whether or not their minds have been swayed. And then enter Iron Maiden Jean and the X-Laws, who want to see the power that Yo has obtained, and whether or not they will choose to side with Hao, become his comrades. It's an interesting bit of a standoff. Nice little bit of tension, I have to admit. And I love how Hao is just watching, checking it out, looking like a supermodel, and Jean just smiles. And then the power that's unleashed is very ominous looking. I always loved this shot, because I didn't know what I was looking at and how intimidating it was. Now, only half of these are actually canon. That's the thing. Like, only half of what you see here is actually from the manga, and that's specifically Faust, Ryu, and Yo's greater ability. Whereas when it comes to Ren, Horo, and Chocolove's, those are completely anime original. In fact, their greater power takes on a completely different form altogether. They don't really obtain what is known as giant oversoul. Well, they do and they don't. It's actually more about combining oversouls for some of the others. Well, combining medium. And it's just like, yeah, no, we're fine. We're not evil. Honestly, this encounter showing them how small they are in terms of things, it shows how much they still have left to grow. And how just being kind of impressed. All the power that they've gained, just feeling surreal to all of them. They're all getting kind of hyped. It's pretty fun. And then he finally obtains the artifact from his grandfather, which is this ancient sword. I mean, considering we don't see a lot of the training that they go through over the 2 months before the shaman fight, I guess it makes sense that they would want that to be a little bit of the padding. There's also this ominous moment with Amidamaru because Amidamaru has kind of gone to this next level as well. And then we get to episode 41, Explosive Oversoul, where how it's just like, yes, all according to Cake. And Opacho is actually mad that they just kind of ignored a lot of the lessons that Hao was trying to teach. And then Jean is actually very interested in the power that they've obtained and how it will affect Yo in the future, since now they have so much potential. They need to know if they're a danger to the X-Law's plan. And then we get a little bit of Yo just kind of scoping out this kind of ancient sword that he obtained from his grandfather, and Amidamaru has been acting a bit strange ever since that power was unlocked. And this is all while they're still trying to find the Patch Village. Which, I mean, it's interesting that they treat the whole journey through America as a bit of a spiritual quest, a spirit walk almost, and Manta trying to look up stuff on the internet. Oh man, this old looking browser. It's so weird. And a little bit of that interesting relationship between June and Pylon, and Ren showing some concern for his sister, which is actually pretty sweet. Lots of character growth. I can't disparage that. And Horo thinking about his sister. And ultimately Manta can't find anything, but Amidamaru seems to know something. And a little bit more of Lyserg's feelings towards Yo and the others, how he would actually like them to join Jean's cause, but Marco's just like, look, it'll be cool if they do, but if they refuse, we pop a cap in their ass, especially since Hao is the source of their power now. And then Hao just rolls up and just like, yeah, he's not going with either option, actually. And Hao's just like, yeah, don't get involved with them or anything. And Margot's just like, yeah, I'm not listening to you. And of course, enter Team Flowers once again in a confrontation, which I'm skipping over. And then we see during the course of the fight, though, that Yo figures out the situation with the other sword, a new powerful attack, the application of 2 spirit mediums. And after the battle is done, Hao's actually pretty impressed. We see their giant forms, which, even by the standards of the manga, Ryu's was always really weird. Ren's is just a giant Bason, and Yo seems to be just a giant Amidamaru. And Lyserg's so impressed with their powers that he wants to get them to come to their side. But Margaret's just like, yeah, it's up to Jean. Well, she seems to be pretty happy about it. And then in comes Hao to ruin their day. Spirit of Fire here to fuck you up. More tension from Hao arriving to deliver a revelation which won't be discussed here. And then episode 42, Spirit of Sword, which has the arrival of Mikihisa, which is a plot point in the manga later down the line. And the big takeaway from this that incorporates into later stuff is the fact that Amidamaru is transitioning into becoming a holy spirit, because he's 600 years old, and that's kind of the deadline for transcending to the next level of spirit. But then the X-Laws show up because they're dicks. And this is basically the moment where they try to bring Yo and his group over to their side. And they're up to something specific. And Lyserg is trying to give the doctrine of the X-Laws as why Yo and the others should come to their side, which nobody else is drinking the Kool-Aid, all because they're seen as similar to Hao because of the power that they've attained, and what Yo technically is, his relation to Hao. And it's like they're doing some powerful spell that will wipe evil from the face of the world, something called the Gate of Babylon. And Yo basically tells them, yeah, we don't like Hao, but we don't much like you either. And basically they're just like, well, we can't have someone who has powers similar to Hao be in this world. And I love that Yo's just like, listen, Lyserg, do what you gotta do, man, but if we're gonna do it, let's go all out. But Amidamaru is still transcending. And the X-Laws are fully ready to just do them in right here and now. And everybody squares up. Honestly, it's a great excuse for basically kaiju battles. Marco notices that they're protecting Yo. I love Mephisto-y. Everyone's doing their best to make sure they don't get close to Yo. And Marco notices and tries to go in for the strike, but the boys backing him up. It's pretty cool. Friends helping friends and all that good stuff. And it's finally time. Amidamaru has transcended, and thus we have a Spirit of Sword. A double medium. And it's like, okay, we need to talk with Jean. The power is even more than we thought it was. And Jean's happy about that. And then Anna explains exactly what Yo did and why it happened, because Amidamaru has become a Spirit of the Sword. And then backstory, which we'll get into later, on another time. Alright, so if you've gotten to this point, if you've watched everything up until this point, it's mostly been everything involving the training with the Book of How everyone has ascended to the next level of their power, all of that good stuff. But if you've skipped forward in terms of the manga, we are in Volume 15, Chapter 126, Stand Up, Team Funbari Hot Springs. We have popped back to episode 43 of the original anime, which is Battle of the Gods, and we are also at the 2021 anime series, episode 22, I'll Go Anywhere With You. As it is finally time after Team The Ren got to show off, mostly because of Chocolove, what they could do, as well as Iron Maiden Jean's first showing in full just how devastating she could be. It's time for Yo and his group to show off what they've learned. And Manta wakes up to Faust trying to take a look at him since he is a doctor. Of course, Manta wakes up freaking out, thinking that maybe Faust is up to something dubious. Manta had fainted after seeing Iron Maiden Jean kill in cold blood. Team Iceman versus Team Funbari Hot Springs. And Manta is freaking out because he's just like, these are battles to the death. That's not cool. But Faust ultimately just tells Manta to trust in his friends and have a little faith that he won't lose the people dearest to him. There's actually some very sweet words from Faust, and really helps to develop the kinder connection that they have with each other. And then we cut to everyone dining at this old abandoned schoolhouse, and Ryu's in a bit of a bad mood for the most part. His nerves are really kind of getting to him, and Anna's just mad about how relaxed Yo is being. Meanwhile, our victorious team enters, and Ren is basically here to talk some smack. And Yo's just like, I'd probably take him out with one shot, shocking everyone. And Ren loses it because of all of that. It really makes it seem like Yo's taking everyone lightly. But then Yo explains that everything they learned from the Book of How has made them incredibly strong. And that's why they have confidence. And Faust has shown Manta the confidence that Yo has, as well as the rest of them. It's kinda nice. Now, the introduction to Team Iceman goes very differently in these two different incarnations. In the original anime, this guy Pino, he's just kind of hanging around, nothing important going on for the most part. And he basically explains why nobody's really throwing down in this one town where a whole bunch of shaman are, is because they're trying to avoid god-class shaman who are very powerful, specifically Iron Maiden Jean, how they're god class, as well as another group who we don't see in the original anime. Pino's a bit of a know-it-all, talking about who will become Shaman King, the strategy you need for all of it, and even tries to call Ren weak because they're in such a big group. And that's when you get Ren's rekindled desire to take down Yo. And that's when he has the encounter with Hao, because Hao likes the cut of Ren's jib. It does make sense because when Ren was first introduced, he definitely would have sided with Hao. Although Ren's personality wouldn't allow him to be truly subservient to someone else. And Manta tries to get them to avoid this confrontation. And Hao can understand why Yo is still friends with such a human. I'll make you mine eventually, Ren. Ooh. Meanwhile, in the original manga and newer anime, Pino talks to Ren and his team after Yo has basically insulted them, saying, "Oh, I'll take him down in one shot," and they just want to teach him a lesson. And Horo tries to diffuse the situation for the most part. And then Pino sees them as friends of Yo, and they're just like, they're all weaklings like you are, and they want to kind of show off, like, they see this as an affront to their abilities, and especially call out Chocolove, since he was the main combatant in this whole situation, and they bring out their spirit. Meanwhile, in the original anime, they mostly bring out their abilities because, they figure that Ren is a follower, and Horo and Chocolove are minions of Hao, and Shaman from the north, Russian Shaman Zora, and in all versions Chocolove comes in prison. She explains that they're out to defeat Hao's subordinates. You don't get the moment because Pino isn't here, because he's still at the bar, where he brings out his oversoul, Bab. Pino's from Ireland, and he has an ancient spirit. And you don't get the moment where Chocolove is frozen solid. And then you have the one Viking guy bring out his oversoul. Death the Viking. He's a shaman from Iceland named Karmaride. And his oversoul is medium is the helmet. Goes in on the attack. And I love how Horo goes in for the defense. Interestingly enough, we don't get the confrontation moment between Horo and Pino, where Horo talks about how, where he's from, it also gets cold, that's why he's an ice user. And Pino, who's from the northest part of Ireland, is just like, yeah, it ain't cold where you're from, boy. It's cold where I'm from. And you actually see Horo's oversoul start to ice over, showing that Pino is a little bit more powerful than Horo. That's completely gone from both adaptations. I think it's a bit of a missed opportunity because Horo and the Iceman team actually do end up having a greater connection later down the line in the manga. And whereas in the original anime, June and Tamao come to help out during the battle, Pino's just like, okay, let's just calm down and back down from this situation. Pino in the manga and the original, it's just like, okay, we showed off what we're capable of. You can put that away as Ren's ready to throw down. He was the backup that was needed there. But Ren gives a warning not to take Yo lightly. And then in the manga, we see that Yo is ready to throw down as he's finally started using the items he got from his grandpa. And thus the manga gets over to chapter 128, Amidamaru's album. Meanwhile, in the original anime, Chocolove has been freed from his watery prison, and we also had the moment where Ren tried to show off a little bit. He's just like, yeah, I know you're not with Hao or anything like that. And then you have the encounter between the Niles and the boys. You also had Pino interfering with Yo, trying to stop Lyserg from, having an encounter, trying to stop Lyserg from taking down the Niles. And after everything is said and done, it's made very clear that the Icemen are going to be involved with events coming up. And then you get to episode 44 of the original anime titled One More Push, where you see a little bit of Pino's backstory when he was much younger and the darker nature of things that he had to go through. Honestly, all of Team Iceman have these very tragic backstory that I don't think the manga ever fully explores in the way that the original Shaman King anime did. I think if the original Shaman King anime had all the content that it needed with some of the stuff that they add, it would actually be even better, honestly. Because the stuff that they add isn't terrible. It adds a lot of backstory to certain things. The savage training that Pino had to go through in order to become stronger, and how he met his spirit medium and all that. It's honestly some pretty cool stuff. Pino has taken some kind of interest in all of them. We still have the moment where Manta wakes up after everything went down, and you have all of Manta's doubts about the shaman fight. In both versions, Faust giving the little bit of a pep talk to Manta. So I'm glad that happens in all versions, where Faust does try to get Manta to calm down a little bit about the whole situation. Meanwhile, everybody's looking kind of gloomy about everything that happened with Lyserg and how intimidated all of them are by the power that they saw from Iron Maiden June and how relaxed Yo is. In this version, the Icemen do come to mess with them a bit, kind of insulted by the idea of all of them becoming so strong within just a little bit of time. We do have the confrontation about how cold it is between their different areas, although having Horo kept at bay by them after he's gone through the Book of How doesn't make much sense, considering it's such a baby shake in the manga. It's fairly weird that they're just picking up a fight like this. It's weird though that they directly challenged Yo specifically. Although How questions it like, we're all gonna take on How someday. Why would we want to fight? Which makes a lot of sense in this situation. I guess it's them trying to scare Yo's team off because they don't find him strong enough. And then they just team up for some reason. And so for some reason, it's the team matches. Like how it works out when you know the difference is, I don't know, I feel a little odd about it, because it's just like, well, why not have the whole group take them on if they feel like they're such hot shit, just to make it fair? I don't know. But in both versions, we have the meetup, and Pino makes fun of their outfits, as well as how they seem, how confrontational they all come off as. And Amidamaru had spied on what had happened. So Anna takes offense with them insulting the uniforms they put up. Horo thinks these guys are actually pretty dangerous and gets insulted by both Anna and Ren. And then you have the moment where Ren talks about the power that they have, but he wants to know about the Book of How and what power that Yo got from that. How was it able to make them so strong? But of course, Anna's not telling an enemy, and she goes on to say it's an Asakura secret, only to be revealed for our direct allies. And that's why all of them learning from it is just like, yeah, that's great if they're all buddy-buddy, but if they're competing against each other, it makes sense for Anna to be like, we're not telling you our secrets. You're not part of our team. The only people who are completely dedicated to Yo are Faust, because Anna brought back Eliza and taught him to be able to do it, and Ryu, who's subservient to Yo in all things, especially because he was taught by Yo's grandfather, as well as his father. And Yo tries to apologize for offending them, and in all versions, Pino tries to talk shit, and Yo tries to explain that Amidamaru was only spying on what you said because he's a samurai and that's just what he does, just trying to protect me. Nothing more, nothing less. And we can beat you even without the information we found out. And it insults the fact that they have all these human spirits, and Amidamaru thinks about everything that they've been through. Honestly, the newer anime doesn't say how long it's been, but the manga says it's been 3 years since that day, and Amidamaru's ready to defend his master, and so are the others. Meanwhile, in the original anime, it's only been a year with everything that's gone down. And whereas in the original, Yo doesn't show off his spirit of sword over soul, in the manga and newer anime, well, of course he shows it off because it's the first time we ever see it. Shows off his massive spirit of sword over soul. And then we get into chapter 129, I'll Go Anywhere With You, and Hal comments on this, just like, oh, okay. He's able to use a double medium and all this. It's pretty impressive. Worthy of the name Spirit of Sword. And he explains to Opachao that what the Yo is holding is an ancient stone sword. And the fact that it's an ancient treasure, a national treasure to Japan, and to hear that it's gone missing, ooh, people would be pissed. It shows the lengths that the Asakaras are willing to go to in order to defeat Hao. And even Hao's kind of impressed by what Yo's able to do. And Pino's taken aback by that technique. And since Horohoro and Chocolove are seeing it for the first time, they're taken aback. And then Yo is just like, yeah, I'm not doing this. This is a little too much. And she explains that even though Amidamaru has become a next level entity, he still retains his human shape for the most part. Amidamaru has become pure sword essence. And now Ren's just like, yeah, the outcome is obvious. Whereas in the original, he's not willing to show off for the most part. In the manga and newer one, Ren's just like, yeah, I already know how this is gonna go. I don't need to observe this. And Ren wants to become even better rather than watching this. Ren wants to learn something that'll surprise even Yo. And Pino's mad because he was actually pretty impressed for a second there. Pino's ready to throw down. And then Team Iceman immediately goes into battle. And whereas in the original anime, they try to go after Yo with the same way they went after Chocolove. Actually have Faust and Ryu defend Yo, wanting to defend them even if it costs them their lives. Whereas in the original manga and newer anime, they went directly after Faust because he was in a wheelchair, and Faust isn't actually as crippled as people would assume he was, as he gave his legs to Eliza, but he found some kind of replacement. It's actually fascinating. He used his dog as his legs, and they get all lovey-dovey. And then we get into chapter 130, Faust's album, and they're taken aback by the fact that, they're all lovey-dovey, and it's just like, why is his spirit a nurse? And Anna's actually pretty glad about this, because it's just like, yes, that's what you get for making fun of our uniforms, only for Chocolove and Horohoro to do the same. And then Manta goes on about it, it's just like, wait, Eliza is talking. Isn't the whole reason why he even joined to be able to bring back his wife? Faust is so happy about Eliza being back. And Team Iceman wants to show off. And then they do a combination attack that Faust tries to leap over. And then they use all of their abilities in conjunction. And then Pino explains why all of them are allied together. Now, in terms of the original anime, when they do their initial attack, Faust blocks it from Eliza to make sure she's okay, which throws everyone off guard because it's just like, did he just defend his ghost? What? And Yo just says, look, it's what matters to him most. Don't worry about it. But Pino takes it as a wound to the pride, if anything else. It's just like fighting for such a dumb reason. But Yo's just like, well, no. Everybody's different. He's just fighting for what's important to him. You shouldn't judge other people's motives just because they aren't your own. Pino takes personal offense to that. It's just like, no, we need to smash them. And then Faust explains, it's just like, I am deeply indebted to Yo because my dream already came true. 2 months ago, Anna, channeled Eliza's spirit. Faust kind of lost his purpose for the shaman fight. Faust thought, maybe I should just go and join Eliza. only for Yo to give him something to live for because of a script that Anna had written about the Funbari Hot Springs, along with the poster she had just recently put up, and how she'd teach him how to be able to summon Eliza himself. Then he just starts advertising the hot springs. Played him like a fiddle. I do love that the other members of Team Iceman are actually touched by the story. Faust will allow no one to touch Eliza. Like, you called us boring, but look, this is the power that we obtained. The Oversoul Mephisto E. And that's where it ends. So all things considered, while I'm very shaky on the pretenses behind a lot of the encounters in the original anime, because it's just like, for some reason, everyone keeps showing up in threes. So it's just like, it don't make sense when you think about it from a certain perspective. It's just like, why do these people show up in threes? Why do these people show up in threes? And when it's a whole group taking on on the entire team that Yo has, it's just like, it makes them seem weaker in a lot of situations. Like, that's the thing. With the power that they obtained from the Book of Power, it's just like, Horo should have had no trouble against them in the original anime because they obtained all the power all together. But in the manga, it's just like, of course they're no match. Pino has a god class spirit, so he's able to overcome Horo, who's only so capable, but he's not able to overcome the likes of Ryu, Faust, or Yo, because they've all just leveled up to an intense amount of spiritual energy. That's where a lot of my kind of issues with a lot of the original anime kind of comes, because it's just like, there's a lot of inconsistency that start to sprout up with how they wrote a lot of the later stuff in order to get around certain things from the manga that they didn't adapt entirely. Not to say it's bad, it's just kind of confusing. It's just like, why are they in teams of three? Why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? They're trying to find context for the Shaman King matchups to just be taking place out in the wild, when their structure doesn't make sense for it to be outside of the shaman fight. But honestly, the animation for the original anime is fabulous in a lot of places. Honestly, I wish we could have gotten some of the people who worked on the original anime to come back for the newer one, because it's those slight bits of flair and slight touches that the newer anime is kind of lacking. If it had that, I feel like it would be an incredible series, because what really holds back the newer anime is the fact that it really doesn't get ambitious with any of its anime, or animation I should say, any of its action scenes. They always seem to be kind of on the dull side. Yeah, a lot of cool stuff happens, but it's just like, you guys aren't really going the distance that you could be going with any of this animation. So both series still have their own downsides. They're just not perfect adaptations when you really come down to it. I know a lot of people will still champion the original series, and I can't blame them. I love the original series, but I really love the Shaman King manga specifically, that has a lot more details. The action just feels a lot more fluid when you're reading it from the manga, and it doesn't have to compromise for time. It's not restrained the same way the original anime is restrained. Maybe that might be the problem. I'm so in the know about the restrictions that the original anime had to fight against that I can see, oh, that's where they had to change something because of this, and because they did this, they have to change something for this, and because they did this, they have to change something around for this. Like, all the workarounds, you can see the hoops that have to be jumped through in order to get the adaptation where it needs to be, and those hoops just feel exhausting. Like, bravo to the person who composed the original Shaman King anime scripts, because I mean, they managed to work in pretty much everything to a certain degree. It's just, I don't know, some of it just feels a little too far off the beaten path, but it was very common for a lot of anime in the 2000s to kind of do this kind of stuff instead of just coming to a point where it's just like, okay, we've caught up. Now we'll stop. But tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. What do you think about Team Iceman? The original anime really got to kind of go in a little bit of their passion and their depth and stuff like that. But the newer anime and the manga is just like, I mean, they're kind of a footnote in terms of a lot of things just to show off the power that Yo's team has unlocked because of the Book of How. And the older anime does a poor showing of that by having Horo so easily overwhelmed by them, despite the fact that he also unlocked new untold power. Like, our team should have all been capable of one-shotting Team Iceman in the original anime because they went through Hao's book and unlocked this great amount of power. There should be no, I don't know if we'll be able to take these guys on or anything like that. But let me know your feelings in the comment section below. If you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. That way you won't miss out on the next episode of What's the Difference. But until then, I've been Duuz-Diz-Din, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.